Thank you very much, Jerry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm here to talk to you about the Jaguar nickel sulfide deposit, which is located in Brazil. In December of last year, we announced our upgrade of the resource, which now delivered more than 730,000 tonnes of nickel sulfide, and that puts Jaguar as the largest nickel sulfide deposit on the ASX that is not held by a major. So it's a significant deposit. As well as that, it's located in Brazil and in the Carajás, where we have access to infrastructure and, importantly, 100% renewable energy by the time this comes online. So we believe that Jaguar is well positioned to deliver 20,000 or more tonnes of nickel sulfate product to the EV market by the end of 2024. I won't dwell on the nickel sulfide demand because we have a commodities analysis analyst talking about it shortly after me. But what I will say is these types of deposits, nickel sulfide deposits, are very hard to find. So when the nickel demand rises, the demand for these deposits are going to ride with it. And hopefully in this discussion I can explain to you why we think Jaguar is one of the better ones in the globe. So we're located in Brazil. We've been operating there for 12 years, and we think Brazil is an excellent place to operate a mine. They have a long history of mining, with the third largest mining company in the world, Vale, mining since the 70s. They have a very well regulated and easy to follow mining regulation system and tenement system. And importantly, the royalties go back to the community. 65% of royalties that come out of these mining projects go back to the local community, so the communities get behind the projects. The environmental process is well understood. We've licensed things before, and recently a lot of the base metal minerals have been added to a strategic mineral policy, which means the government is now trying to fast-track these projects into production. But most importantly, Brazil is a renewable powerhouse. At the moment, about 80% of the renewable energy in Brazil comes from renewables and mainly hydro. So by the time we get into production, we believe this will be very close to 100%. So we're in Brazil. We're in the Carajás in the north, which is a really prolific mining province. It hosts multiple world-class deposits, including the Salobo copper gold mine, which is the second largest ISCG mine in the world and the largest iron ore mine in the world in S11D. We're about 40 kilometres north of the towns of Tucumán and Orlando do Norte, and they have a population of over 100,000 people. And those two towns, they service the Onça Puma ferronickel plant, which is a $3 billion plant. So there's plenty of skilled labour and service providers at the ready. There's also a 138 kV station, which will allow us to hook into that national grid. We've been in Brazil for 12 years now, so the board is very experienced in Brazil. We've progressed projects through the development and licensing stage, and we've got people in the management team that have experience in licensing, developing and operating mines and nickel mines specifically in Brazil. So we've got a great team led by Bruno Scapelli in country and Gaudius Montresor, who's been responsible for keeping those. We've now got 14 rigs running 24/7. So Bruno leads our charge in terms of getting the licensing done, and that's a key part to getting this project completed by the end of 2024. We've lodged our ERIMA, which is the environmental application, and the mining lease application in third quarter of last year, third and fourth quarter, and we expect those to be granted sometime during this year. We're working with the landowners. We've actually purchased, I think, over 70% of the land in which we operate, and most of that land is pastoral areas, so we see no impediment to getting this project licensed. At the same time, we're working with the local community, working a lot on developing and improving accesses and bridges so that we can get in there, but also so that they can get around, and also a couple of community programs. So in the middle of last year, we delivered the scoping study, and as it stands today, the Jaguar Nickel Sulfide project is a combination of open pit and underground mines delivering around 2.5 or 2.7 million tonnes of sulfide ore to a nickel sulfate plant. And that is simply a traditional float plant ahead of a POX, where we will have partial oxidation of the concentrate and then there'll be filtration, purification and SX circuits to produce the nickel sulfate product and some cobalt, copper and zinc byproducts. So we're working on the MET at the moment. We have over 3 tonnes of material in ALS doing the bulk flotation and hydromet work, and that will go a long way to optimising that process and also delivering product that we need for marketing. We've recently contracted Ausenco to be the lead engineer on the DFS study. Ausenco is an Australian company. They have offices here in Belo Horizonte, in Chile and Canada. So they're well placed to help us through this study. They've recently done a couple of base metal flotation EPCM contracts in South America, so they understand the space. The mines you see behind you there, they're based on the resource from March of last year. The December resource has got 30% more nickel. So we're already in the process of re-optimising and rescheduling those mines, and we expect to deliver a further resource in Q3, and that resource will underpin the DFS. So the mining engineers will have their work cut out for them, trying to determine how big this mine can actually be. So these are the economics from the scoping study, and at the price we used back in May was around about $18,000 a tonne. And at $20,000 a tonne, which is $9 a pound, we're looking at about a $1.6 billion NPV with a 70% IRR. At today's spot price, that number increases to 2.5 billion Aussie dollars with a 100% IRR. Now, we can't control the nickel price, but what we can try and control is some of the project development opportunities. The new resource is not in that number. That will be in the next number, and we think it's going to be bigger. We will re-optimise open pit and underground stopes and open pits, and then also reschedule. And we'll also go with Ausenco out to the local service providers and contractors and get local-based prices. And when converted into US dollars, we think that can enhance the economics. And as I said before, the process route optimisation and trying to get the best recovery through partial oxidation of that concentrate. So it's not only about the cost per tonne of nickel anymore, it's also about the cost to the environment. And we engaged an independent analysis of our scoping study, and that plotted us in the top 3% of global nickel producers in the world in terms of greenhouse gas emissions per tonne of nickel equivalent. And this is going to be a very important metric going forward when the battery makers are looking at the product. At Centaurus, we believe that the best nickel tonnes are those with the lowest greenhouse gas emission and the highest operating cost margin, and that's what we have at Jaguar. What drives that is essentially the high-grade nickel at surface and also our access to 100% renewable energy. Well, 80% at the moment, but we expect it to be 100%. So in December last year, we announced the upgrade to the resource of 80 million tonnes of 0.9% nickel for over 730,000 tonnes of nickel. Importantly, 500,000 tonnes of that is within 200 metres of surface. These are the Jaguar deposits, and these are the Onça deposits. That's about a 3-kilometre strike length. The pits you see there are the scoping study pits, and these are the in-pit resource shells that we use for that resource. And they were ran at 20,000 tonnes, $20,000 per tonne nickel. What you see is the pits are starting to coalesce. So they're not only getting deeper, but they're joining up. And what that means is that mining engineers can look at bringing in bigger gear and potentially pushing up the production. So we can, in the DFS, we will not only look at extending mine life with this new resource, but we can also evaluate if we can make this thing bigger. Just as importantly is the high-grade component. If you run a 1% cut across Jaguar, you've got 22 million tonnes at 1.6% nickel, and about 65% of that is within 200 metres of surface. So that gives you really good flexibility at the start of your operation and allows for strong cash flows during payback period So we have 14 rigs on site at the moment, and half of those are now focused on infill. We want to get all that indicated material all the inferred material into indicated ahead of the next resource, because that will underpin the DFS and the reserve, and we can only consider indicated or measured material in that reserve. So we're pushing to bring that up to indicated, and a portion of that will be in measured as well. But we're also looking to continue to grow. So we've grown this since our maiden resource in June of 2020 by 200,000 tonnes of contained nickel, and that's in just 18 months. And that was with 4 to 7 rigs. So we've now got 14 rigs on site. A bit less than half of those are now dedicated to resource growth. So our team on site is targeting to get to 1 million tonnes of contained nickel metal by the end of 2023, and that will place us as a world-class nickel deposit. And why we think we can do this is because Jaguar is a little bit unique in the nickel space. It's not an intrusion-related deposit or a commodity-related deposit. It's not constrained by geometry of the intrusion. It is unique in the nickel space, but it's not unique in the IOCG space within the Carajás, and explorers have been exploring this for a long time. It's basically large structures, regional scale structures, scavenging, in the case of the IOCG, the copper and the gold, mineralisation from the basement, and depositing it out along large structural areas. At Salobo, this thing is being drilled down to 1,400 metres. So we see no reason why Jaguar, which is the same mineralisation genesis, can't be down to the same depth. Our deepest drill hole to date is down to 570 metres, and our average drill depth is around 250 metres. Over here you can see our deepest drill hole. It returned 14.5 metres at 1.5% nickel, including 4.5 metres at 3, and obviously it remains open at depth. So all of these, Jaguar South, Jaguar Central and Onça Preta, actually have underground operations underneath them in the scoping study that were based on the base of the resource. So if we add more resource tonnes, we expect that these stopes to continue down on the resource. So if we step out 50 metres at these deposits, along strike of the deposits, we generally add 10 to 15,000 tonnes of contained nickel. So that means half a year of production on a strike length of 50 metre step out holes. And why do we think we can keep hitting it? Well, the EM that we have on site, so last year we bought some EM, we got that out to site, it has capacity down to 750 metres, and the ore that we have is semi-massive, massive sulfides set within a very resistive rock, so it really stands out. We've got an almost 100% strike rate of drilling plates and hitting some sort of mineralisation. Here you have an example of 17 metres at 4.86 in hole 155, and we have plates that are now a further 250 metres below the deepest drilling, and they'll eventually be drilled out. Beyond the extensional and step-out drilling, we also have a pipeline of greenfields targets that we're going to get to. At the moment, the RC rigs are focused on sterilisation drilling, which is key to getting this project up and running, and we need for the engineering. We expect to get back to greenfields exploration drilling within the next couple of months, and I look forward to bringing you some results from that. So we have a pretty aggressive timeline ahead of us. We're going to deliver a DFS, a new resource, a DFS, and the maiden reserve by the end of this year. We will have the licences and be able to make a formal decision to mine by next year, and 18 to 24 months of construction will see us achieving production at the end of 2024. It's a very aggressive timeline, but we think it's achievable. Quick corporate snapshot. We did a very successful raise. It was oversubscribed a couple of weeks ago. Most of the top 20 followed their money. The top 20 now holds around 70%. And importantly, there's a couple of North American investors there that understand operating in the Americas and Brazil, and also some guys that understand nickel. So I guess the key takeaways for us is we're focused on nickel. We've got the biggest nickel sulfide deposit on the ASX that's not held by a major. We think we can grow that to 1 million tonnes of contained nickel, which will put it in a world-class nickel deposit. It's really leveraged to the nickel price. At today's spot prices, you're looking at around a $500 million EBITDA per annum, and which happens to be our market cap. And we have a great team. We're well funded with 80 million in the bank. We've got 14 rigs on site and a lot of work to come over the next 12 months. So if you'd like to talk about Jaguar Nickel Project, please come and see us at booth 43. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.